Now, if your heartburn keeps coming back, then what you've been doing is not actually fixing the problem. It's just managing it, and you've been doing it temporarily. And the reason it keeps returning is because the real cause is still there and quietly repeating the same process inside your body over and over again. Now, today, I want to show you exactly what's happening in a way that you will never forget about heartburn or recurrent heartburn. Now, let's start with something that is very familiar that you could relate with, and you've had a long day at work. I want you to picture that. You've had a long day at work, you're tired, you're hungry. So when you finally sit down to eat at home, you don't hold back. So you fill your plate, maybe something spicy, maybe something fried. You eat quickly, you feel satisfied, and then you lie down. So at first, everything will feel very fine, but slowly you'll feel it. There'll be a burning sensation that will start deep in your chest, and it's not sharp burning sensation, neither is it sudden. It builds, rising slowly upward, sometimes even reaching your throat, and sometimes leaving a sour taste in your mouth. And I'm sure perhaps you've experienced this if you're watching this particular video. And in that moment, you already know what it is. That is what we call heartburn. You put a name to it, to that particular feeling, heartburn. So you quickly dash to a chemist, get an antacid, you treat it, and to be fair, of course, it works. And within minutes, the burning fades. You feel normal again, and life goes on. That could be what is happening to you right now. Maybe something you experienced and you treated it that way, but then it happens again and again and again. And that's where the real question begins. Why does it keep coming back? That's a question you could be asking yourself right now. Why is this heartburn recurring? Why is it coming back? So to understand this, I need us to go inside your body. I'll journey with you inside your body. Now, your stomach is not just a food container, as many people perceive it to be. It's an active chemical environment. And by that I mean it produces hydrochloric acid, which is a very strong acid, and it's designed to break down food into smaller components that your body can absorb. So the presence of acid is not a problem at all. In fact, it is essential that it is there so that food can be broken down in a manner or to components that can be absorbed. Now, between your stomach and your esophagus, there is a specialized structure that it's called sphincter. But don't worry about the name or the terminology. Think of it as a valve, a one-way valve. Its job is very simple. It's that when you swallow food, the sphincter opens, and that allows food into the stomach. Then it closes tightly once food has got into the stomach. And once it closes, it's supposed to stay closed. So the reason why it's supposed to stay closed is because above that particular valve or sphincter, we have your esophagus. And unlike your stomach, your esophagus has no protection against acid. It has no protection against acid. Now, here is where things start to go wrong. That valve that we call a sphincter can become weak, or it can relax at the wrong time. And sometimes due to pressure, or sometimes due to certain foods, or sometimes due to body position, it may become weak or relax. And when that happens, the acid in your stomach doesn't stay contained. It moves upward into the esophagus. When that happens, when the acid moves back into your esophagus, there is where the problem begins. Now imagine pouring acid onto skin that isn't designed to handle it. Your body reacts immediately, of course, and that reaction is the burning sensation that you feel when that acid moves back into your esophagus. So heartburn is not random. It's not random. It is a very specific event. It's the acid moving upward into a space it doesn't belong. Now, here's the part most people misunderstand about the whole of this issue. So when you take something for heartburn, an antacid, could be whichever antacid that you think of, you will feel better, of course. But what exactly changed? Did the valve suddenly become stronger? No, it didn't become stronger. The valve didn't become stronger suddenly. Did the triggers disappear? No, The tears didn't disappear. Not at all. Did your stomach stop producing acid completely? No, the stomach didn't stop to produce acid completely. So what happened is much simpler, and I'm going to explain what really happened. The acid was neutralized. The acid was reduced, or it was temporarily blocked. So the symptom improved when you took antacid, but the mechanism remained. I hope you get that clearly. And because the mechanism remained, the heartburn returned, or the heartburn returns. So this is what creates the cycle: the burning, the relief, the return. The burning, the relief, the return. That is the cycle I'm talking about. Now, let's go deeper, because if you really want to break this cycle, if you really want to break this cycle, you have to understand what pushes it. And that's what I'm going to break down so that you can get to understand what really pushes this cycle. First, we talk about the pressure. We talk about the pressure. So when you eat large meals, you've just come from work, you filled your plate, you didn't take lunch, you didn't take breakfast, you filled your plate, and you eat large meals, your stomach expands. And as it expands, the pressure inside increases. Now, think of that valve again, the sphincter that I talk about. If pressure builds below it, if pressure increases below it, it becomes easier for it to open. So even when it shouldn't open, it opens up. And that's why overeating is one of the biggest triggers. Not because of the food itself, but because of the pressure it creates. That is overeating. Secondly, we talk about the position. And I'll explain how position influences you experiencing heartburn. So when you're upright, gravity helps to keep acid down. So the stomach is like a container. So when you're upright, the acid occupies the lower part of the stomach. And when you lie down, you remove the advantage that comes with gravity. So now even a smaller amount of reflux becomes way much easier when you lie down, because gravity is no longer there to hold the acid down on the bottom part of the stomach. That's why heartburn is worse at night. Not because your body is failing, not because your position is working against you, but because, simply put, you've removed the advantage that comes with gravity. Third, relaxation of the valve. Certain foods and substances, they can cause that valve to relax more than usual. And you're talking about certain food and substances, you're talking about fatty foods, you're talking about caffeine, you're talking about alcohol, and even some components of chocolate. They tend to make the valve to relax more than it should. And this makes it not to seal properly. And when it doesn't seal properly, of course, acid escapes into the esophagus. Fourthly, we talk about sensitivity. Fourthly, we talk about sensitivity, and I'll explain about this. So over time, your esophagus can become more sensitive to acid. That is, over time, as it gets exposed over time, it becomes more sensitive. So even small amounts feel more intense. When the esophagus is exposed to small amounts of acid, it feels very intense. And this is what people say the situation is getting worse. But that's actually that what actually is happening is that your system is becoming more reactive. You don't necessarily that the situation is becoming worse, but your system is becoming more reactive. And then there's something most people tend to overlook completely, especially the working class. This is called stress. You're stressed at work, you're stressed by situations of life. Stress, before even I talk about it, it's important you understand that your digestive system and your brain, they are deeply connected. So when you're stressed, your body changes how it processes signals. Okay? You become more aware of discomfort, more sensitive to internal sensations. So the next level of reflux, it feels worse because your body has changed how it's processing signals. Now, if you put all of these things together that I've talked about, talking about the large meals, talking about the late nights, talking about trigger foods, talking about a symptom only treatment, talking about stress, that's not random heartburn that happens. It's not a random heartburn that happens. That's a perfectly functioning system that is producing a predictable result. And over time, repeated exposure of your esophagus to hydrochloric acid. Remember, we said this is a concentrated hydrochloric acid. It's about a pH of 3. which is highly concentrated. It can lead to irritation, it can lead to inflammation, and in more serious cases, even structural changes to the particular body organ, the sphincter and the esophagus in this case. So this is not something that you should ignore when you're experiencing. Now let's talk about control, because the goal is not to create fear. The goal is to understand this particular condition, and when you have understood it properly, or when you understand the mechanism, you can now interrupt the cycle, and through that you'll be able to assist yourself. Now, smaller meals, they reduce pressure. When you take meals in smaller portions, they reduce pressure. And staying upright after you've eaten, staying upright after eating, it tends to use gravity to your advantage. Gravity will help you to contain the acid in the lower parts of the stomach, which tends to prevent movement of the stomach content in the esophagus. Now, identifying trigger foods also will help you to reduce valve relaxation, and managing stress will reduce the sensitivity to hyperacidity. And suddenly, you'll no longer be reacting to heartburn. Of course, now you'll be proactively preventing it. So the next time you feel that burning sensation, I want you to pause for a moment. And instead of asking, how do I stop this, or dashing to pick that favorite antacid of yours, begin asking yourself, what really caused this? Because that question will change everything that you need to know about heartburn. So it will shift you from temporary relief actually to long-term control of heartburn or even hyperacidity. And once you understand that, heartburn will no longer be something that just happens to you. Once you understand that, it will no longer be just something that happens to you. It will become something that you can actually manage, and doing so intelligently. So if you found this helpful, I want you to follow simple real world or photo. So if you found this helpful, I want you to follow this channel, subscribe to this fun channel, and you'll be able to get more simple real world explanations of medicine, the kind that don't just inform you, but change how you understand your body. Subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you can be informed once I've uploaded the next video. See you in the next video. Bye bye.